All right. Hello, everybody. Thought I'd try my hand at one of these little mini devotionals. I find myself not sleeping too much lately and with a lot of time on my hands. So I thought I'd put something together to share with you guys. As of the recording of this video, Stacia and I have now kept a human baby alive for 4 days. So we're feeling pretty proud about that. So today I just wanted to do a word study. I find these words as I go through the scriptures that kind of catch my attention, and especially in the King James, you never know what you're going to find. So today I'd like to talk about the word eschew, E-S-C-H-E-W, and specifically, just so it's not too long, I'm just going to deal with the 3 times that this Greek word is found in the New Testament. It's found 3 times, and it's translated 3 different ways. And so I thought maybe we could see if we could unpack this a little bit. So the place that it is translated, this word eschew, is in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 11. And this is would be our little passage of scripture that we want to refer back to. And for context, let's just do verses 8 to 12 of 1 Peter chapter 3. Finally, be ye all of one mind, having compassion one of another, love as brethren, be pitiful, be courteous, not rendering evil for evil, or railing for railing, but contrariwise blessing, knowing that ye are thereunto called, that you should inherit a blessing. For he that will love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil, and his lips that they speak no guile. Let him eschew evil, and do good. Let him seek peace, and ensue it. For the eyes of the Lord are over the righteous, and his ears are open unto their prayers. But the face of the Lord is against them that do evil. It's hard to break into 1 Peter, since there's so much great instruction to believers throughout it. So that can be your homework. Read 1 Peter. It's worth it. But this little passage gives us some good context for the word issue. When I first became a believer many moons ago, I went to a corner bookstore and I bought myself a Bible, and I don't know if I knew everything about debates about translations and things like that, but I understood that the King James was revered, and so I picked one up and kind of read it. And of course, I never spoke King James English, and nobody I know really did. So every so often you stumble across a word that is not in your natural conversation, and it requires you to do a little bit of digging. So I wrote this down too. So maybe this word caught my attention as well, because it sounds like somebody sneezing. Eschew. Either way, it stuck with me all these years. The word's a verb. Strong's gives us a few ideas as to its definition. To deviate, to shun, to decline. Perhaps the simplest word is to avoid. So our primary verse tells us to eschew evil. And I don't think I'm going to shock anyone when I suggest that Christians should avoid doing evil. If you don't agree with this, our elders are standing by, and feel free to send them a text or email if you disagree. Another great aspect of the word issue, maybe just for the sake of getting it in our mind, is that ooh sound at the end. Our tastes are changing as Christians. Things we once loved and ran headlong into are now distasteful to us. Sin and evil should be gross. It should turn our stomach. So it should have that ooh factor. Ew, like Brussels sprouts. Once again, apologies. Our elders are standing by. If you feel Brussels sprouts and have not gotten their due respect, please take it up with them. All right. So I like the feel of a shoe. I don't think it'll ever replace the word avoid in our common vernacular, but sometimes common words are a little bit weak in getting across everything that's meant to be conveyed by this word. And we don't give it the weight we ought to. So now in these COVID-19 days, maybe avoid is coming back into its heyday because everything's about avoidance. Have you ever seen somebody lately crossing the street when another person is approaching them? That's part of the idea of avoiding. The second, so just taking that idea of avoid, the second place that I want to look at where this word is used in the scriptures is Romans chapter 16 and verse 17, where we're told to avoid people who cause division. So it's specifically translated avoid there. But as you can see, it's linked to avoiding people. And it's rare that the scriptural response is to shun people rather than trying to work things out. But I think it's a testimony to how seriously the Lord takes the local church, and that it might be necessary action sometimes for the sake of unity. And so sometimes you need to eschew people. So the idea of the word expands a little. It's not just trying to do better. It's one thing to try and avoid sweets. It's another thing to be the person who has completely sworn off sugar, as maybe a weak analogy. The third translation of the Greek word is really interesting. It's translated gone out of the way. And we find that in Romans chapter 3, verse 12. And I'll just read a couple earlier verses for context. Starting in verse 10 of Romans chapter 3. As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. There is none that understandeth, there is none that seeks after God. They are all gone out of the way, they are together become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. Very famous verses that describe the state of mankind and the foundation for our need of salvation. So here, I believe this instance of the way the word's been translated, you see that hint of deviate that Strong's definition kind of hinted at. You're out of the way. You're off track. Here it's speaking in the negative, the idea that you ought to be on the good track, but you're doing evil. And here, in this particular scripture, the only resolution to get back on track, or to get on track in the first place, is to be born again. But in First Peter chapter 1, or chapter 3, we're talking about believers that have fallen into sin and need to find a way to get back on track. So we see eschewing evil as a fundamental. It's a mindset. The eschewing part is the mindset. It's the way we think about evil, but it's also paired with doing good. Eschew evil, do good. So you have the mindset, recognize things that are not pleasing to the Lord, and find things to fill your time, good things. And a lot can be said about that, but I just wanted to just talk about this particular word. Peter tells us that there's blessings associated with this as believers. So once again, we're not talking about being saved or anything along those lines, because we know we can't earn it, and we know that the scripture is not trying to say that unless you toe the line, you're not going to make it to salvation. It's talking about being blessed. And here it says, if you want to love life and see good days, among some of the other things that are spoken of there, you ought to eschew evil and do good. And if you don't, the Lord's face will actually be against you. He wants you to be on track, and He'll do what it takes to get you back on track. And so it's just a little thought about what our mindset and what our actions ought to be. Eschew, and He will bless you. Thanks, guys.